So maybe let's start with the first question. Do you remember the first time you met with me and any notable first impressions?
So I think definitely the first time I remember ever coming across you on the physical space was in the offices of one of our investors. Um, and I already knew what you were building, and I was actually quite starstruck when I saw you. I was like, oh wow, this is one of the guys that's like actually doing something really interesting in the tech space in Mexico.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and then I think I think later than that it was Endeavor, and I think through there we became friends, and so.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do remember. So a couple of things that are interesting. The first one is, we went to China together. This was, probably a few weeks before the COVID crisis, and I really enjoyed spending time with you. And you were. I remember when we were visiting multiple companies in China with Endeavor, actually. You were making the smarter questions. So I was really impressed on the type of questions that you were making. So I was like, and then the other thing is, it's interesting because we have a lot of people in common that we know, and Endeavor and investors and everything, and every time they mention you, it's like, I think I would have said the same thing. So it's like it's interesting. So I get I think I get identified a lot with what people tell me about you, and so I always really enjoyed our time in China, and I think there's a bunch of some sort of like mindset that we share.
Well, I don't know if you remember this, but in one of the long bus rides in that China trip, we were negotiating some terms with an investor that was going to become an investor. And I was like banging my head trying to figure out how important some of these terms were. And I asked you, and you're like, I wouldn't really put much attention to that sort of stuff. And it was kind of like really liberating. I remember turning to my co-founder and telling him like, this thing that we've been like discussing, like Adal says we should just like, don't worry about that stuff and just close the deal. And we did that. And actually it ended up being that it wasn't something that important. And so
nice.
Thank you for that advice.
Oh, no, not at all. No, good to see that. Yeah, no, it's a very fun time. Yeah. What would you think is the best piece of advice that you've received as a founder or leader?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's related to like starting a company. I was really interested in this Bitcoin stuff, and I didn't really know what to do with it. I was trying to do like little projects. And then I heard Jeff Bezos talk about the regret minimization framework, which is sort of, he talks about that in the vein of like starting Amazon and starting his own business. And for me, that was an incredible piece of advice. And I was like, I'm gonna regret it forever if I don't start a Bitcoin company right now.
Yeah.
And I don't regret it.
Another thing that I remember, kind of a piece of advice, is from Paul Grafton from Y Combinator. I think they studied a lot of patterns on what's most of the surprising stuff you've seen from startups that you never expected. And one of them said that you need to control your own psychology, because the startup is kind of like in a roller coaster, and sometimes you feel you're doing great and you're going to dominate the world and everything's looking great, and then immediately one minute later, 1 second later, you're thinking the totally opposite, right? And maybe nothing has really changed in the company, but it's so intense that you just need to control your own psychology. So I think that's also one thing that I've valued a lot, which is basically making sure you can understand that everything that happens, even the positives and the negatives, you should dial it down a little bit and make sure that it's part of the normal life of a startup.
All right, what's a non-tech skill or hobby that helps you in your role?
I think reading as well. Like I liked reading. I remember I enjoyed reading like people like Freud, and a little bit of Lacan, and just trying to understand human nature. Like I think that evolutionary psychology is really interesting. Like why? Because at the end of the day, we're here because we're animals that evolved, and we did it in a successful way. And there's something that actually made us successful. And if you think about the principles of evolution and why we were successful, and you tie that to how psychology works and how the human mind works and how selective memory works and why is that economically optimum, I mean, but I didn't do anything more than just trying to read and ask people and try to do introspection. But I don't know what do you think about that? Yeah, like
No, I think it's fascinating. I mean, I definitely there's a lot of times in my day where it feels like I am the company's psychologist. Like it definitely there's it feels like yeah. I would see how that's a very important skill to help you in your role. You know, I can't tell you that I am a good psychologist, but
no, me neither, for sure. Yeah.
I guess on my side, like one of my big hobbies is I became a pilot about 15 years ago of small planes. Like I don't know how to fly a big airplane or anything like that, but there's a lot about like the skill set that you need to have in order to be a good pilot that I actually have found it to be very translatable to the day-to-day office. Like everything from like risk management, and a lot of our business is like risk management. And so what are the decision-making frameworks that you can put in place? And I have also found it to be very interesting to connect back some of the actual flying experiences back into the day-to-day of the company, like sharing my own experiences as a pilot when I've had an issue with an engine that runs out, or whenever I've had a situation where the airplane wasn't really doing what I wanted it to do on the ground, and how do you make those decisions, and how do you basically recover from those, that I have found to be very, very helpful in the day-to-day management of the company.
Yeah, I can see that. And by the way, like I remember you mentioned about the piloting back when we were in a bus going to one of the Endeavor events. Yeah. And that's so cool. I want to do that, right?
Anytime you want. The question is, if you had to launch a startup together today, what would it be? I am super interested in the space that you're in, and I would do something that's very related to AI, like something where you can maybe with almost very few people, you can basically think about these big businesses. I don't know. Something around that.
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely AI. I think the other one would be like the intersection between AI and like virtual and augmented reality, and eventually like Neuralink. And kind of like new user interfaces of computational. I think that it's going to be really exciting, but we should definitely start that, man. Let's do it.
Sure, yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you, man.
Yeah, no, great. Good to see you as well. Yeah, thank you. Pleasure having us. Thank you for having us.